really and getting serious about having your contract formalities in place, which I must tell you are not that difficult to achieve, as long as you get them resolved and parked before you start work. Okay, so if you commence on a project with a half-baked contract, and then something goes wrong, you're going to find yourself seriously wanting to backpedal. So I suppose we can say prevention is better than cure in contract as well. Okay, so yes, we're in extremely difficult times. You have one bad commercial event on your site, and you can lose the entire margin you thought you were going to make, plus more when you start engaging arbitrators and the like to assist you. So we have to, my advice is you have to try and set yourself up as best as possible to prevent those things happening. And we can't always prevent them, okay? But you will be in a much stronger position if you pay attention to detail beforehand. In most instances, you can't stop. There's nothing you can do to stop a company that goes into business rescue or liquidation. There's no real interventions you can take to get paid unless you have, for example, a payment guarantee from that company, which in my experience is an enormously difficult thing to achieve. Okay, I actually don't know one subcontractor who's ever got a payment guarantee from a contractor. Okay, so the reason why we have contracts, ladies and gentlemen, is to contract us out of the common law, okay? Because there is no branch of law in South Africa that covers construction. Okay, so that's why we have contracts. And today I'm going to take you on a very quick whirlwind tour of the concepts of contract and why we have them, and the things you need to pay attention to, okay, in order to minimize your impact when things go wrong later, if they go wrong. Remember, in most instances, we have a contract, we sign it, we put it in the drawer. Save for managing your extension of times when those events arise, and making sure that you submit notices on time. You don't really otherwise have to refer to the contract unless something goes wrong. At that time, you pull the contract out the drawer, you phone a practitioner like myself, dire straits, we need your help, open the contract, we find it wanting for various reasons, and you will never get your contract fixed when the parties are at loggerheads. So you have to get everything done when you are still in the honeymoon period, at the beginning of your contract, so to speak. Okay, so today, these are the things we're just going to cover. How does a contract come together? What are the standard form contracts? And some of you, no doubt, have used standard form contracts, but I'm sure the content of my presentation today will still be valuable to you. The importance of paying attention to detail, what is this retention and preliminaries, what are these things? Dealing with your cover letter. Okay, so Mahal alluded to this this contractor that he had visited, who said that he had all these onerous terms and conditions foisted onto him by his employer. And I must tell you, Mahal, that if you had to carry on reading that main contractor's terms and conditions, you'll see that that was only half of them, and the other half was by their own volition. Okay. And the way you protect yourself from these things is you do it as early as possible, and we'll talk about it. You do it in your tender cover letter. So before you even get to the table to start discussing these things, you deal with them as early as possible. Okay, and then a few other pertinent issues we will deal with. Some of them Mahal has already touched on. So the first thing I want to talk about is offer and acceptance. It's a very basic concept in our law. Okay. And every contract globally, okay, is formed when somebody's offer is accepted by somebody else, okay? And that party can be an individual or a juristic person, company, a trust, a CC, etc., etc. Okay? So what makes you bound to all the provisions of the bill of quantities, the specifications, the program, the preambles, the all the safety regulations, the triple B, double E regulations, and so the list goes on, okay? It is when an offer that is made by one party is accepted by the other. And either, okay, you accept an offer that is made to you, or the other party accepts an offer that you made to it. And the process starts when you submit your tender, okay? When you submit your tender, you are making an offer to the other party to accept it. If they take your tender and they write back to you and they say, we accept your tender, a contract is formed and there's no backing out of it. Of course, that doesn't happen in reality. We have a series of counter offers that go back and forth, isn't it? Until you finally agree something. But you have to you have to keep the door open to discuss onerous terms and conditions. You don't have to accept all of those. And the more members and the more people in the industry that start sticking together, okay, and we've had initiatives in 2022 regarding this, and they were extremely well supported by our members. We have to start behaving in a way that where we are not being abused by other parties, okay? And even the Competition Commission is happy with the interventions that we want to make, or that we have made, in fact, okay? So you do not have to lie down and accept whatever you are dealt with, just so you can desperately secure a job that might end up putting you out of business anyway. All right, don't allow yourself to be abused. Okay, remember, it's a free market. So as long as your terms and conditions are legal, which I'm sure most of them are, okay, you can't cry later, okay, about the fact that this is so onerous you can't deal with it. Very few instances in law you can escape for that excuse, okay, and you won't find any in construction. All right, so what is an offer? Briefly, submitting a tender. You know, every day there are thousands of contracts put together. You provide a quote, you hand out a menu in a restaurant. There's the simplest example. You hand out a menu, someone's making an offer. You choose something off the menu, you've accepted the offer, and a contract's concluded. You die as a result of eating that, a contract's in place. Okay. You can make offers orally, by conduct, and in writing. And this is another, I've put this in today. This is very, very relevant. Okay. A written contract can be accepted orally. Someone can phone you to say, I accept your written contract, can you start tomorrow? They can be made, I'm talking about offers and acceptances, can be made by conduct. So you can, if you are sent a contract, you don't sign it, you don't do anything, but the next day you start working, you are bound by that contract, whether you signed it or not. And of course, it can be made in writing. So option 1 and 2 must never be an option in your life, in my opinion, and everything gets done in writing and signed. Okay. No contract has to be in writing, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, unless it is legislated like that. So, for example, if you're transferring property and it has to be registered in the deeds office, it has to be in writing. No other contract has to be in writing. And thousands of contracts every day are all orally or by conduct. So don't be fooled that, oh, well, that's sure, thank goodness that's not in writing, therefore, or it hasn't been signed, I'm not bound. Well, you are. Okay. Pay attention to detail from the start. Okay, so there's very briefly examples of acceptance. Like I've said, proceed. Number 2, without accepting a tender in writing, etc., etc. Okay, we only accept offers in writing, and that's that. All right. A counter offer, as I've said, that this is the normal process of offer and acceptance that goes through your contract. Okay. Note that 2 willing parties, both of sound mind and authority, can enter into a law-abiding contract simply by their conduct. Okay, you can be sitting in a bar on a Friday night and someone says to you, will you come and build my boundary wall? You tell them, look, I'll do that for 25 grand. Can I start tomorrow? Contract is in place. Okay, it's the interpretation of that contract that will give you problems later, because what he thinks and what you think are 2 different things. And then it's left to the lawyers to decide who was thinking what and what's the correct way to interpret it. We never want any of that in our lives, which is why we have to have a fully completed contract signed and sealed before we start work. Right. So what contract do we use to do this? There are several available to you. Okay, my advice is don't even think of using some other contract that somebody has drafted who thinks they are now a commercial expert. Okay, the JBCC, the Master Builders Association. You do not need to go further than those two organizations in terms of a contract. Okay, they are called standard form contracts. They've been drafted by industry professionals, represented by stakeholders throughout the construction supply chain. Okay, and they get revised every now and then. The JBCC is more than 20 years old now. Why would somebody else think they can put a better contract together? And let me tell you, the only reason they want to do that is so they can shift the risk, okay, to you and make it better for them. Okay. So please try and stick to standard form contracts. This is an agenda the MBSA is also pushing. Like I said, we had a very successful, well-attended session last year, and all of the big contractors were there, and they're all committed, okay, most of them at least, that this is the way we should be doing business. Okay. Okay, so if you are a main contractor, JBCC, Principal Building Agreement. That will cover 80% of your contracts that you secure. You might be exposed to GCC, the General Conditions of Contract, the NEC, which is a British contract, or FIDIC, which is a Swiss contract, and it caters more for civil works. Okay, you should try and contract with the JBCC. Why? Because everybody knows how it works, because it's been in operation for more than 20 years, and it's the most common used agreement in South Africa. Please don't use the NEC if at all possible. I'm not trying to downplay the NEC or be defamatory about it. It's an excellent contract. It requires extremely high level of professional supervision and administration, suited for places like England, which is where it comes from, and is not suited to South African conditions, which is why more disputes annually, most disputes are in the NEC in this country. Unfortunately, the parastatals like to use it. Eskom and Transnet, for example, leads to massive disputes. Okay, the JBCC's got a minor works agreement. The JBCC's got a small and simple works agreement. Okay, this is quite a new document, came out in 2020. If you're doing small alterations, additions, new build, whatever. Okay, wherever you have a project where you are contracting directly with them, with your client, and there's no principal agent. Okay, this is an awesome document. You can buy it on the JBCC website. It's an awesome document to cater for that. Okay, you cannot use a document that requires a principal agent on a project that doesn't have a principal agent. Okay, so please bear that in mind. And then, of course, you've got the MBSA House Building and Small Contracts Agreement. You've got the MBSA Agreement for Renovations and Refurbishments. We are currently working on the MBSA Minor Works Domestic Subcontract Agreement. Okay, sorry, that's for subcontractors. And as I said, you've got the MBSA Domestic Agreement. There's a JBCC nominated, selected, beyond the content of today. Master Builders MBSA Labor Only Agreement, and the Small and Simple Works. Okay, so there's no reason, sorry, it has been drafted. There's no reason why you can't use any of those documents. So no, please don't step out of them. At the end of all of those documents, as I'm sure many of you know, there's a section called Contract Data, the Schedule. The reason we have this is because a standard form contract is a generic contract. It's impossible for it to cater for all the variables on a project. Example, how long is the project? What are you getting paid to build it? Who's providing insurances? What are the penalties that you late, etc. Now, if you try and use a standard form contract and you leave all of this blank, okay, you may as well not even have the contract, because when you try and apply the contract, you have to immediately go to the contract data. Let's say you're late and you're liable for a penalty. You go straight to the contract data. It tells you how much it is per day. If you don't fill it in, what does it mean? Doesn't mean you don't pay a penalty. Okay, it means there's a massive issue regarding interpretation, and you may be more exposed than you thought. Okay, please, ladies and gentlemen, I see every year hundreds of subcontracts that have got their contract data blank, and they've just signed a contract because the contractor said, sign over here, we're starting tomorrow. In the honeymoon phase, those gentlemen so happy because this is the biggest contract he ever won, and he signs away there at the bottom of the signature page, chucks the contract in the back of his bucky, and off we go. 6 months later, he's a month late, and there's all sorts of drama. Now we dust off the contract. Oh goodness, it's grossly lacking in detail. Okay, there are two parts to the contract data. There's a part that is normally completed before you submit your tender. That is the one that tells you what the penalty is, who's providing the insurance, etc., etc. Okay, and there's a second part which you fill in, okay, where you put your tender price and how you want your preliminaries adjusted, etc. If you are tendering on a contract and you're working under the JBCC stroke MBSA suite of contracts and you don't have the contract data, ask for it. Okay, they have to give it to you before your tender closes. How are you supposed to price a job if you don't know what the penalty is? Penalty can be R1 million a day. Are you going to be interested? No, I don't want the job anymore. Okay, payment terms. Sorry, they're 120 days. No, I don't want payment terms of 120 days. So you have to have that part of the contract data. It's not a secret. You are perfectly entitled to ask your contractor or your professional quantity surveyor to give you the populated contract data. If you take anything away with you today, please take that away, okay? Okay, I'm going to move on to retention and guarantees briefly. And this is, I'm bringing this in because also very important to the topic for today, because if you get this wrong, it can have a huge impact on you, okay? So you should always attempt to get a construction guarantee. Now, the small contractors or the newer contractors, or perhaps the contractors who haven't got the greatest balance sheet, okay, which is probably fairly common now in our industry because of the battering everyone's taken for years. It is a little bit more difficult, okay, but it should be part of your goals if you don't have a facility to get yourself a construction guarantee facility. This will prevent people from holding your attention. Okay? Cash flow, I don't have to tell you, is the lifeblood of construction. Okay? If you don't have cash, you're dead. Can't pay your labor, can't pay your suppliers, fall behind program, you get penalized, you're done. Okay? When someone is holding 10% of every one of your payments, all the way to practical completion, okay, it has a massive impact on your cash flow. And I'm sure the ladies and gentlemen in the room will agree with me that they don't often have a markup that's even 10%, okay? Which means you are only earning your profit after practical completion, okay? And you have to carry the cash flow of the job the whole way. If halfway through the job, your contractor goes into business rescue, you can kiss your retention goodbye. If you have a construction guarantee, you are safe. Okay? You'll get your guarantee back because the contract's going to be cancelled. No one's touched your retention money. Because why? There was no retention money. Okay. You might have put a bit of security with your guarantor, which you'll get back the minute you give the guarantee back. All right. There are specialist insurance companies that do this. If you want to be connected to them, talk to me, talk to Mahal, talk to Boertje, and we'll connect you with them. Okay? It is worthwhile. They will at least also tell you what you need to have before you can get a guarantee facility. Okay, so they'll teach you, they'll tell you, look, we've had a look at your financials, etc. We can give you a facility, but you need to do ABC. So go work on that, come back in 6 months. If we're happy, we'll grant you a facility. Yes, it all costs money. Yes, you have to put security. You have to pay a premium to get it, which of course you're going to include in your tender price. but it is the safest option. Okay. Remember, it is highly unlikely the contractor is going to be given a payment guarantee. Okay? I think Mahal alluded to it earlier as well. Okay. Believe it or not, the standard form contract, the default position is actually that you will get a guarantee from your client, employer, developer. Okay. But that is always scratched out. Right. Why? Contractors can't afford to give every subcontractor a payment guarantee. And employers and developers also don't like to give them because they're expensive and they tie up your collateral, your overdraft, your credit facilities, whatever. Okay, this is a very powerful instrument, the payment guarantee. Okay, so bear in mind when you're commencing in contract, as you know, the risk is unbalanced because you have to give retention or a guarantee, but you ain't getting anything back except a pay when paid clause. Okay, so the risk in construction is unbalanced. As a matter of fact, it is an incredibly unique industry in the amount of risk that we have to take and the amount of margin that we earn. Okay? I don't know any other industries where it is like that, where you take an enormity of risk, but you get such a small return on it. And that's life, I suppose. And it's not only in South Africa. Plenty places are like that. Okay, so security for performance. So as I've said, you know, you can either give retention or a guarantee. My suggestion and proposal is you should always try and give the guarantee. You get variable reducing guarantees, and you get fixed guarantees, which are combined with cash retention. Okay, now for today's presentation, we're not going to go into details, but you must know we do have sessions during the year where we teach you more on this. We have JBCC, we have intensive JBCC and MBA training courses, 1 day, 2 days, online, in the classroom, extremely well priced, much better priced than our competitors. Take advantage of those things. There's invaluable information you're going to learn from those training sessions. Okay, remember, if you do get a guarantee, okay, you must have an expiry date on it. Otherwise, it sits as a live financial instrument until forever, until the final payment certificate's been issued. Sometimes the final payment certificate can be delayed for years because there's a dispute over the final completion of a job. Okay, and let me tell you, if a QS or a contractor says we don't accept guarantees with an expiry date, you tell them the industry doesn't issue guarantees with an expiry date, and they don't anymore. Okay, so make sure it's got an expiry date. You can make it 6 months after practical completion. That's fine. Okay, so like I said, the risk of retention only ties up your cash. So you're giving your entire, in my experience anyway, most of your profit, if not more than your profit, is getting held up every month. Okay, it often takes an inordinate amount of time to get to final completion. You're exposed to business rescue, you're exposed to liquidation. No interest on retention. Now, if you are on a sizable job, let's say you're a main contractor on a 200 million rand job, your retention number can get to 20 million. Okay, no interest on retention. Why on earth would you let somebody else sit with that much of your money when you could be earning with your own interest? Okay, that interest alone will pay for your entire guarantee, and the next one. Okay. All right. So another thorny issue I just want to talk to you about is indirect costs and preliminaries, and it all goes with the topic for today. If you don't have a preliminaries and you only have a schedule of rates, you are going to get hurt when a project is extended or delayed for valid reasons, okay, where you get an extension of time with cost. I have seen it 90% of the time, subcontractors price for their indirect costs in their rates. Foreman, Bucky, QS, utilities, visiting contracts manager, whatever. I'm sure you know what the indirect stroke preliminaries are. You are perfectly entitled to price preliminaries in general. Today, they are known as preliminaries. Okay, old days, it was preliminaries and general. And you are more than welcome to allocate them into different categories. And like I said, it's beyond the scope of today's very brief introduction to what we do, but you will get exposed to this if you don't already know how it works, so that you can protect yourself. You can submit a preliminaries that defines exactly how much money you're going to get paid every day if the job gets delayed for risks that are not your risks, okay, such as a change in design, right? Increase in scope, a work stoppage, which got nothing to do with you. In most instances, there are a lot of circumstances that lead to an extension of time with cost. All right. So last year, the MBA North had an intervention on unethical business practices, and like I said earlier, a large number of our members signed a pledge to standardize the way they submit tender cover letters, all in compliance with the Competition Commission, of course. So, and Mahal can confirm this. My understanding, you should all be signing the pledge, okay? And you will then be provided with a generic cover letter, and you can use it to submit your tenders. It also has a variable section in it. So it tells you this is the general breakdown or the setup of the letter, and then you can key in the variables that you want, okay? I'm not prepared to accept payment of 60 days, okay? Whatever. There are things you can change in there, but we are trying to standardize the way things are done to prevent unethical business practices and to prevent the abuse of our members. Okay, so the tender cover letter, ladies and gents, is one of the most important things you can submit. It doesn't matter if you're submitting to Grinica LTA or Mrs. Smith down the road. Okay, it doesn't matter. The way you set up, the way you deliver your offer for acceptance by the other party is critical in contract. Okay, because you can't fix it later. So when in your tender cover letter, you have to state everything. Okay. If they let's say they refuse to give you the populated contract data, that's where you deal with it. Okay. Our price is subject to review and agreement with the contract data, which we have not yet received for our perusal. You are covered immediately. If they're interested in your price, I'm going to send you the contract data immediately and say, oh, please have a look at it. Tell me if you're happy. If you're not happy, you don't have to accept it. Okay, so tender cover letters, and maybe I'm talking to, maybe what I'm telling you is a bit too basic, I don't know, but I see these mistakes being made all the time, which is why I'm bringing it up. Okay, another factor that is going to hurt your cash flow and your profitability is escalation. Now, in the 70s and the 80s, and I suppose part of the 90s, we had rampant escalation in South Africa. Some of the older attendees today will agree with me or remember those days. Okay, we had rampant escalation and inflation way in double digits all the time, and we had a method to be compensated for the increase in your input prices, labor, materials, fuel, etc., 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 salaries. Okay, and some of you may have heard of the Haylett formula. It's called the Haylett formula because it was invented by a South African called Professor Haylett. Okay, he also helped write the standard system of measuring builders' work, and he developed a formula that caters for the increase in input prices. It is still applicable today. It works on an indice basis. Okay, I'm not going to teach you how the formula works today. I'm just telling you about it in case you don't know. The Department of Statistics issues the indices every month, and there's a formula to calculate your adjustment for escalation on a monthly basis, and that gets included in your payment certificate. Okay. Now, those days are back, ladies and gentlemen. So we're back with high inflation. We're back with crazy increases in imported prices. In my experience, from what I've been told, I'm not a contractor anymore. That's what I'm told. Okay, you've got your labor demanding increases. You've got your salaried staff crying because the cost of living has gone up. imported components are going through the roof. My advice is you can't submit a tender for any decent length of time, like more than 3 months, without considering your risk to inflation and qualifying your tender accordingly. Okay, so the days are back. Either you calculate the amount you want for inflation yourself, which means you're doing it at risk because you don't know where it's going to go, or you rely on the Haylet indice, which also brings risk because it's only as good as the information that goes into it. But I was actually having a look at the indices just the other day for another client, and we noticed that most products have gone up between 8, 10, 12%. Okay, so the indice is actually working. Okay, because if the indices are doing that, that means you're going to be compensated like that as the project goes on. Any project that goes over December, January, and into the increase section, okay, or part of the year, has to have escalation priced into it. You're not going to get a 3 or 4% increase, ladies and gents. You know that. You're going to get a 10% increase or a 9% increase or a 15% increase because that's what because of Eskom, because of the rand, because of international shipping, because of global issues, whatever. Okay, the prices. Hopefully, this scenario doesn't last for too long. I think it's got to cool down at some stage, but at the moment it's rampant. Okay, so any tender for a decent amount of time, please think about escalation. If you haven't got time to sort it out in your tender cover letter, we require to discuss compensation for escalation prior to accepting an award of this tender. Done. You are safe. Okay. Load shedding. When you are pricing a tender, you better start thinking about load shedding too. Okay. When we first had the real ramp up of load shedding, so remember we had some load shedding in 2008. Then we had years, we had a long time of the occasional load shedding, etc., etc. And you weren't really anticipating load shedding, okay? Which is why it got classified in a lot of instances as a force majeure event, okay? A force majeure event is an event which you didn't predict and neither party could reasonably contemplate, and now it happened, okay? So load shedding, just that doesn't fit into that category anymore. Okay, so now, okay, you have to price your tender knowing that you are going to be in stage 4, 5, 6, whatever it is. And if it gets better than that, that's a bonus. If it gets significantly worse than that, maybe we can talk about it. Okay, but at the moment, you know that's what you're dealing with. So you cannot rock up onto site, and when the tower crane goes off for 3 hours, you complain to the builder that you've got no access and tell him, but you knew that. You know we only get 5 or 6 hours of power a day. Okay, and he's right. Okay, so think about it. You may have to price generators, battery powered tools, etc., etc., etc. Okay. If you're not sure, you qualify your tender. Okay. Even I put on the bottom there the so-called construction mafia. That's also a known event. Huh? So, when the mafia, well, I hate using that word, okay? When these groups of people, were invading sites and stopping work and whatever, they were considered like force majeure events because you didn't expect them to happen. Now, I think you're going to be found wanting if you told someone, well, you never expected that to happen, especially if you're working in KZN. Say, well, yes, you did, because it happens on every site. Okay, just think about that. All right. Mahal mentioned pay when paid clauses. And Mahal, I'm sorry, I'm taking up time here, but I think it's important, and I'm nearly done. Okay. There's a reason, okay, that contractors have pay when paid clauses. I'll get to that now. And you must think about this risk. So 99% of subcontracts contain a pay when paid clause. So the standard form agreement will say you get paid so many days after the payment certificate is issued. Okay. Contractors will strike that out and say you get paid so many days after we get paid. Otherwise, you ain't getting paid. Now remember, This oak sitting with your construction guarantee, and you've got no payment guarantee from him. So you must consider these bullet points here. You know, and you can't just hope for the best, ladies and gents. You have to think about this. Who is the employer? Okay, if you're a subcontractor, who's the ultimate employer? Whose project is this? Is it Zenprop, Old Mutual, Sanlam, or is it ABC Property Developers and it's the first job they've ever done? I think you have to find out. Who's this contractor? Is it Concord, Wilson Bailey Homes, or is it also ABC contractor who's got no track record, only been around for 6 months? Am I getting a payment guarantee? How often am I getting paid? So one way to get around the risk of business rescue, etc., is to improve your payment terms. Okay, and if a contractor is interested in your price, you'll be surprised how much you can negotiate. Huh? Okay, so what are the payment terms? You know, I had a contract this week where they said the payment terms are 55 days. Okay, plus you must add on the month you had to work before that, before you're even eligible for payment. So, you know, you're working like 75 days before you get paid. So you say, no. I want to get paid an upfront payment, and you might get that right, a small upfront payment, and I want to get paid every fortnight. Okay, you're minimizing your risk. You're only exposed for 2 weeks, 4 weeks at worst. Am I required to waive my lien? For those of you who have attended on the bigger stuff, you are definitely required to waive your lien. Also beyond the scope of today's presentation, but basically what it says is, if I haven't been paid, I'm not allowed to keep possession of the property and deny your access. Okay, so in common law, if someone doesn't pay you for a building, you can deny them access to it, lock the gate, tell them you ain't coming in till they're being paid. Okay, if you waive your lien, you ain't allowed to do that. Okay. And of course, do I have the cash flow to cover a late payment? Because 2 wrongs in law do not make a right. If you are dealing with a late payment, you can't just stop work. Okay, you have to put them on terms for non-payment. You have to go through a notice period. You probably have to put them on a second notice. By the time you finally get to the position where you start being protected, it could be 2-3 weeks down the line. During that period, you have to keep working. Otherwise, you'll be in material breach of contract. Okay. So there are just some, like I said, a whirlwind presentation on some of the hottest issues that are floating around at the moment. And just remember, we offer these JBCC and MBSA training courses. We want to get back in the classroom this year. So they've been virtual for the last few years, as you would imagine. This year, we want to get back in the classroom because it's better to have interactive sessions where, you know, people can bring their real life experiences. We can workshop some of them together. Okay. And they cater for all levels of contractors and subcontractors. Unless you've had previous training and you know how to manage these documents, not only recommended, but mandatory, in my opinion, that you attend this training. Okay. And I'm sure Sheila or Boertje will give you details for that. And thank you very much.
Brad, thank you very much. Just before you go, Brad, I would like to tell the members that are present here, they can forget everything that was said today, but don't forget everything that Brad said. Because I'm honest with you, because that is the devil in the room. The devil in the room that is destroying construction at the moment is what Brad has covered. And if we could get our members on that pledge, the pledge that Brad is talking about is that we are signing a pledge to say we will not allow ourselves to be abused. And we have consulted with Competition Commission because what has led us to be here where we are is that collusion that construction companies were clamped on in 2010. And now everybody at this point in time is accepting the substandard terms and conditions of a contract. And what could be better than what Brad has presented to you here, where he's making you aware of what you're putting yourself into by signing a substandard contract. So you cannot say you did not know, but trust me, he will still sign everything of what Brad is saying today. Why? Because people are desperate. One contractor gets liquidated, another one comes and take the very same terms and conditions of the one who has just been liquidated as a member. And where is the power of the association? If we are associating together, you should be knocking on to me tomorrow and I should say, no, I am not taking those terms and conditions because MBA North member has just been liquidated because of you.
Yeah.
Don't forget anything of what Brad has said. There's some stuff, document, what we'll send it to yourself. Remember everything about what Brad said. Forget everything else, but remember what he said. Brad, there's a question for you.
Okay.
Hi, Brad.
Hello.
Thank you for your very informative presentation. Much appreciated. I want to ask you a question, which is obviously a burning issue currently in South Africa with regards to load shedding.
Yes.
I heard that you emphasized that it doesn't fall under force majeure. Now,
Yes.
why I want to ask is that if you think about the amount of time that it takes for one to put together a tender and ultimately getting it awarded, and I'm
Yes.
talking in the context of public
Yes.
organizations,
Yes.
or public sector rather. So I want to ask because you find that at the time of preparation and tendering for this, none of
You're breaking. I've lost you.
Can you hear now?
Yes,
Brad?
I can hear now. Yes, please carry on.
Did you lose me? Sorry.
Yes, I heard most of that. You can carry on. Yeah, like if you're
So-
submitting a public works tender, yes.
Yes, I was saying at the point that someone is putting together this tender, none of us knew about load shedding. At boom, you land a tender, you land a contract, and you are affected by load shedding, which at the point you were tendering for, none of us knew. It came like COVID came. We didn't expect it, you know?
So
You weren't prepared
yes.
for it. How then do you deal with this particular issue?
No, you can. If I understand your circumstance, you are telling me that as typical with public works, the tender award process duration is often very long, and you prepared and submitted your tender before this hectic load shedding commenced. Is that right?
Yeah, not me. I'm asking a generic question. I haven't.
Oh,
but
generic question.
to understand.
Yeah. So let's say, so
Yeah.
we've had this type of load shedding, let's call it 6 months. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, if you submitted a tender before, and even as it was just starting, I suppose you can argue, okay? If you submitted a tender before the reality had set in, that every day this is what we're going to be dealing with, okay? You are absolutely protected in terms of the contract. It's all about the time that you submitted it and what you knew at the time that you submitted it. So that is a circumstance that was not reasonably contemplated by the parties, that you did not reasonably make provision in your contract for, and that. Did I lose you?
No,
No.
we're still here.
Okay, and that you can in most instances get time and money for. Beyond today's training, but there are definitely avenues. Okay, so if you're working on a project that's already a year on site, okay, and then these things started, absolutely, okay, absolutely, you've got avenues to claim loss and expense and extension of time. I'm not saying you're going to be compensated for all your costs, but you're going to get something, and you're definitely going to get the time, okay, which will protect you from penalties. So it's not going to help you with your staff, but it's going to help you with penalties. So you can definitely get time, and depending on the circumstances, I would argue that you could get some compensation as well.
Thank
Okay.
you. Brad.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
No, you're sorted.
You can talk.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
satisfied. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm satisfied with it. Answers the Thank you very much appreciated.
All right. Is there any other question? Okay. Thank you, Brad.
Okay.
All happy on this side. Everyone
Okay,
seems to
well,
be contracting beautifully.
they all look shocked. Okay.
They look like pros. Look like they handled it well. Thanks,
I wish
Brad.
you all the best. I wish you all the best for your future endeavors, and I hope everyone has a good year. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Okay. We will now hand over to